Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Okay, so today I'm going to be painting Easter Gnome, and I'm sipping on some mango tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are chrome yellow, green oxide, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, fire red, Mars black, cobalt blue, and titanium white. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I'll be using for some drawing. And then I have two brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, and I have a number 7 round synthetic brush. I refer to these as small and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using from the same type of canvas and the paint and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting our sky and our first step to the ground. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are blue, brown, white, green, and yellow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a nice soft blue, pastel-y kind of blue for the sky. And we'll have the sky a little bit darker at the top and lighter down at the bottom. And then we'll do some nice stippling effect for our grass. So the color that I'm going to be going for on my sky is a nice soft, like country blue. I've already pre-mixed it so you can see where I'm headed. How I got to that was I used about equal parts of my cobalt blue and my brown, and then just added a little bit of white at a time to get it into the shade of this nice soft blue that I'm looking for. What I'm in essence doing is toning down my cobalt blue so it's not too vibrant for me, and it ends up being a nice earthy, natural kind of blue for my sky. So this is about where I'm headed. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to load my brush with that blue. I'm going to start up at the top with a left to right brush stroke. You can make it really smooth and go continual straight across, but if you like the effect of having a little bit of movement in that sky, you can do this left to right type of a long crisscross type of a motion. So as we go into the lighter color, as we're coming down, it might end up looking a little bit like there's clouds. So I just picked up my custom blue plus white on my brush, and what this is going to do is I'm going to get this color to go a little bit lighter as it's coming down towards where I want it to stop. I'm going to be bringing my sky about 2/3 of the way down my canvas, which is about right in through here. So if you want to mark it so you don't go too far, you can certainly do that. Then what I did was I picked up more white paint without washing my brush, and I'm going to get my sky to go lighter and lighter as it comes down this the canvas. I'm going to bring it. I just keep picking up white at this point so it gets lighter and lighter. I might actually do a full-on left to right in a second, so I feel like my sky has a little bit too much movement in it, so you can, if it's still wet, just kind of go back and forth. Get it to go as soft or as blended as you want. It's going to be a visual preference on your part, so you do wherever your painterly eye is happy. And I just keep picking up white paint to come all the way down to my marker in through here. And then once I get down to my marker, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to wash and dry my brush in order to get that layer of grass on. So this is looking pretty good for me. You could certainly do more than one coat on your sky. Again, whatever works for you is where you should bring it. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush now, and I'm going to tackle my ground. So I'm going to start at the bottom of my ground with green and brown on my brush at the same time. So I have green and brown on my brush, and I'm going to be dotting my canvas like this. So this is a nice textural type of brush stroke that is going to allow you to have a realistic looking appearance to your grass, so it's not, so you don't detect distinct brush strokes. This is giving you that really kind of stipply type of look for the grass to make it look like it's got some almost individual type of pieces to it, or at least the tips of them. And then as I work my way up the grass, what I'm going to do is now I'm going to pick up green and yellow. So I didn't wash my brush, I just started picking up some green and yellow, and this is going to start to put some sunshine in my grass. And you don't need a ton of paint. I mean, I started out with a pretty good amount of paint on my brush, but what I'm allowing myself to do is just kind of run out of paint. So that's going to give me some lighter spots and some darker spots, because the paint will, when it's thinner, it'll be a bit brighter because you'll be able to see that white from the canvas underneath it a bit more. And my sky is still a little wet, so you can also bring part of this up into your sky area. That's going to make it look like you've got some out of focus type of foliage around the edges of the canvas. So that's a really fun effect. If your sky isn't wet, you can certainly pick up a little bit of the white and or blue. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up some white and a tiny bit of green on my brush just to get the top of this grassy area finished up and get it to meet in with that background sky. You can make yours really firm and really green if you want to. There is going to be a lot of other information with all of our eggs and our grass and our flowers and our cute gnome. So you don't have to worry about making this perfect. We've got lots of other details to go on top of this. So once you've got this done, we are going to be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So just make sure that you've got everything colored in. Then you can put this large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our gnome and our eggs. I'm going to be using my chalk. I do recommend that before you start the step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So I'm going to be guiding you through a series of basic shapes and markers, and we'll connect the markers and we'll make some shapes, and by the time we're done we'll just have a nice simple outline that we'll be able to color in during the painting process, and then we'll put all of our details on later. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to start with my gnome nose, which is just going to be a little bit of an oval type of shape near the center of my canvas. So I'm going to find myself the center of my canvas, which is kind of right about in through here. I'm going to, well, it might be a little bit lower than that, maybe somewhere about here. I'm going to go to the left of that about 2 inches and make myself my first marker. So somewhere in here is my first marker. I'm going to go above that by about 1.5 inches, and then I'm going to connect those two with an oval type of shape. So a little bit wider than it is tall. So something like that will get us started. And then I'm going to put the hat rim on. So I'm going to have, my hat is going to be a little bit bigger on the right side than it is the left side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come from the center right here over about 2.5 inches, make myself a little bit of a marker. And on the left-hand side, I'm going to come over maybe about 1.5 inches. So this one's a little bit wider than that one. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these 2 markers with just a fun kind of floppy type of rounded shape for the top of my hat, or for the rim of my hat. And then I'm going to bring this down in a vertical line about 1.5 inches, and then I'm going to bring it back up and connect it to the side of my nose, somewhere in through here. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to bring it down in a vertical line to about the same distance as that, maybe a little bit higher or lower. Give it a little curve right here, and then just bring it back up and make it meet in with the top or near the top of my gnome nose. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the top of my hat. So I'm going to have my hat kind of in a triangle type of shape, and it's going to have a little piece that kind of leans over. So I'm going to have the tip of my hat right about here. So this is maybe about 3 inches from the top of my canvas and a little bit to the right. If this is the center of my canvas, a little bit to the right and down about 3.5 inches. I'm going to connect this to my rim. So I'm going to come inside my rim just a little bit, maybe about 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to give myself this big, long, kind of wobbly line. I'm going to go up higher than this marker in through here, right about to here, and then bring it back down like this. Then I'm going to connect here to way over here. So again, I'm going to come up here maybe about 1/2 inch or so. And I'm going to do the same thing, only this time when I make my wobbly line, I'm going to bring it way up and higher than this marker in through here. So maybe somewhere in through there. And then I bring it back down and I meet it down with this marker in through here. And of course you can make that into whatever kind of fun shape that you want. If you want it to poke out a little bit, make it poke out a little bit. It's your tip of your hat. You get to make it however you'd like. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a couple of fun ears, rabbit ears, to stick out of the rim of my hat. So these are going to be just kind of carefree. You can make them bigger shape or smaller shape than mine. I'm going to have mine kind of sticking out in through here is going to be this one. And I'm just going to kind of take this and give myself this fun curved type of line for my bunny ear in through here. And then on the left side, I'll do a similar thought process, giving myself 2 little markers here. And this one I'll have a little bit different shape. You can certainly have yours of a similar shape if you want, but I'm going to do one, kind of leaning over and the other one not. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase these 2 little lines inside my bunny ears. So I took my brush and put a little bit of water on it. And I'm just erasing those lines in through there because I want to make lines inside of my bunny ears. So I want to make myself an inside line like that, and then I'm going to do an inside line like that. So when we go to color it in, we'll have an inside and an outside of our bunny ears. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to start working on my gnome body. I need to kind of anchor all of the pieces, its arms and its bottom of the body and its hands. So I'm going to do that with the egg that my gnome is holding. So I'm going to come down from my nose, I would say about 3.5 inches. That's going to be the top of my egg. And then I'm going to come down about another 3 inches from that, make myself the bottom of my egg. And then to make the egg, I'm going to have the top a little bit more narrow and the sides a little bit wider. So something like that. And something like that. It doesn't have to be a perfectly shaped egg. You can certainly make yours into whatever shape that you'd like, but that's how I'm going to do mine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a couple of little gnome hands. So I'm going to have a little thumb and then just almost like a little mitten kind of a marker. And I'll do the same thing over on this side. So I have a little thumb and then a mitten type of a shape that covers a little bit into that egg, so it looks like it is overlapping. And then I take my brush with some water on it again and just erase these 2 little lines that are on top of my gnome hands. And then I need to put an arm on there. So a little bit to the left of my hat, right in through here, is where I'm going to have my shoulder coming out. And I'm just going to give myself a curved line that's going to meet my mitten, the top part of my mitten, and then a curved line that meets almost the bottom of my mitten. And I'll do the same thing over on this side. So a little bit in from the edge of my hat, I'm going to give myself a curved line that meets kind of the top, near the top of my mitten or my hand, and then a curved line that meets almost the bottom of my hand. Then I'm going to give myself a body to my gnome. So I'm just going to go a little bit to the right of my hand, so somewhere about here, and just give myself an arcing line that goes about halfway between here and the bottom of my canvas, so somewhere about here. And then on the left side, a little bit, maybe an inch to the left of my hand, I'm going to give myself just one little line. It's an arcing line like that, and it's only about an inch long. Now what I'm going to do is going to do a whole bunch of egg shapes at the bottom of my canvas. So I'm going to start with the ones at the bottom and build my way back. I only have two or three rows of eggs, but you could certainly have it as many as you want. So I'm going to start with a couple of big ones down at the bottom. So I'm going to have one in through here. This is going to be a big, huge one in through here. I'll have a little one over here. I've got one in through here. I've got one in through here. You can see I'm just kind of making some round type of egg shapes that are popping up from the bottom of my canvas. Something like this will give me one over here. That'll be kind of my front row. And then for my back row, I'm just going to add a couple that are going to be partial sticking out from behind. This is going to be my clothing. I think I'm going to have one maybe over a big one behind these guys in through here. And then maybe another one in through here. And again, they don't have to be perfect. You can certainly modify yours whatever way that you want. And that is all I'm going to be doing for my outline. You can make any modifications that you want. And we're going to be using our medium brush, or our small brush, for the next step. So you can just put your chalk away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat of our hat, our clothing, and our eggs. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are yellow, blue, green, red, and white. And I'm going to, on each color that I use, I'll be pre-mixing myself a light pastel-y color. So the first one that I'm going to be doing is my hat, which is going to be a light yellow. So what I'm going to do is I took my yellow and I added some white to it. So what this does is it's going to make it into a nice light pastel-y springtime yellow color. So this is going to be the base color that I'm going to be using for my hat. I will be doing more than one layer on all of these items because we're going to be doing highlights and shadows and all kinds of other information. So as you're adding this base coat, I don't want you to feel the pressure of making it perfect at this point because we are going to be doing so much more to these elements. This is just providing us with that color that we'll be able to build upon later. When I get down to my ears, I'm just gonna color right around them. I am gonna leave myself a little bit of a visual guide for this hat. So where the rim meets the upper portion. So I will leave a bit of my chalk mark visible in through here so I know where the difference between those two is later on. I do have this little sliver over here of the side of the hat, so I'm going to tackle that. And same thing with over here, just tackling that little piece and then just finishing up the hat with this yellow. So while I have the yellow on my brush, I will also decide if there's any of my eggs that I want to have this same color on them. And I, in fact, have already predetermined I will be having some yellow eggs, but on your part, if you want to take this opportunity to decide if you want to have any of your eggs in this yellow color, we will be doing that. So I don't have to wash my brush. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to decide what eggs I want to be yellow. So I'm going to pick this one is going to be yellow. So I'm just going to bring it right up to the outline of the eggs that are next to it. Give it a nice base coat here. And again, no special brush stroke, just getting myself a good start to the process. I'm going to have this one over here in this yellow color as well. And though maybe I'm going to have one more yellow one. You can have as many as you want. You could have more or fewer than mine. Maybe you want all of your eggs to be yellow. It'll be totally up to you. I'm going to have this one being yellow as well. And then once I've got my yellow eggs, I'm going to be doing the clothing next. So I'm choosing to do my clothing in a nice pastel blue color, which will complement my sky, and I'm also going to have a couple of eggs in that color, but you could certainly do yours in whatever color you want. I am washing and drying my brush right now, and I have pre-mixed myself my pastel blue. So what I did was I just took a little bit of white and mixed it in with my cobalt blue. So again, this could be a custom color that you want lighter or darker or a different color altogether. That'll be up to you. And then once you've got the color that is speaking the most to you, I'm going to be just painting in the sleeves of my gnome in through here with this light blue color. We'll be putting little cuffs on the edges of the sleeve when we do our details, but right now I'm just coloring it in a nice flat color to get the base on there. I'm going to do this sleeve as well, so just bringing it right out to the edge of my chalk mark and making sure if I can hide that chalk mark, I go ahead and do so now. And if you don't hide it all the way, that's okay. Again, you'll be able to take care of that in future steps, bringing it right up to the hand. And then I'm going to color in this bottom area underneath my egg, underneath my hands. And when I get to the sleeve, again, I'm going to leave myself a little visual cue so I can keep those two, just a little bit of a separation between those two. And then I'm going to bring this color right to the edge of my eggs. So when we go to paint in all of our details, we'll have a full coverage behind those eggs that we can work on. And I'm just using this blue in order to this will be the bottom portion of my gnome's clothing. It'll be I don't know, they can wear all different kinds of clothing. They can have dresses, they can have pants, they can have whatever you've imagined them to have. I'm just making mine just have maybe this robe of sorts for his outfit, for his spring outfit. And then I'm just going to finish coloring this in blue. And then I'm going to make a decision if I want any of my eggs to be blue. And I am going to have at least 2 of my eggs are going to be blue. So once I've got this on here, just making sure I've got pretty good coat over the whole thing. I'm going to have this egg down here is going to be blue. So I'm going to just bring it right up to my chalk mark, make sure I can hide that chalk mark if at all possible. And again, if not, you can certainly tackle it in a future step, and then just giving myself a nice good coverage. And then I think I'm going to have this egg over here is going to be blue as well. So just getting all the way to that chalk mark. And you might find that you want to use a bigger or a smaller brush as you're doing this. Maybe you even want to plan for some polka dots or stripes on your eggs. You can decorate them whatever way you want with different colors and stuff like that. Now I'm going to switch colors, so I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to go in for some pink eggs. So my pink I'm going to be creating with red and white. So I just took a little bit of my red and mixed it in with my white. You can have whatever shade of pink that you want. This is looking pretty good for me. So once I've got the color that I want, I just decide which eggs I'm going to have pink. So this one's going to be a pink egg for me. So again, just bringing it right up to my chalk mark and right to my little hands. So if you've got the thumb or the finger part that's overlapping the egg, just bring that color right around it, and then just bring it down to whatever your clothing color of choice ended up being. And then I'm just going to bring this all the way down to the bottom. And if you run into wet paint during this process, if my blue was still wet and I got a little bit into my pink, I wouldn't be worried, because you're going to again be doing another layer on top of this later. I'm going to also do this egg in through here is going to be pink. So I'm just going to load up my brush with that pink paint, bring it all the way to the edges, trying to cover up or at least put a good first coat on top of that background grass that we had. And that grass is going to provide us with a nice, again, a nice natural neutral base for these eggs, providing with a good tone behind them to make them look nice and natural. And I'm going to go ahead and do this one over and through here is going to be pink. This one's going to be a little trickier because it's behind a couple of the eggs, so just gonna take my time going around these. And again, I'm not really concerned if I bump into one of the other ones by accident, because we've got another step that will be hitting these again, so that step we can use to make any corrections along the way. And then I'm going to do one more color for my eggs. I'm going to do a light green color. So once I've got these pink ones done, I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And my green is just going to be light green. So what I've done is just taken a little bit of my green oxide and add white paint to it. So again, it can be any shade that you want, but I'm just going for a nice pale pastel light green. And I just have 2 more eggs to color in with this color. And it may turn a little bit darker as it dries. So if that happens to you, again, it's because we have this dark base underneath it. And if it turns too dark for you, when we go to do our highlights and the final details on these eggs, you'll be able to brighten them up. So if they're a little bit too dark for you, once they dry after this first coat, you'll be able to adjust that brightness when we go to do the final step on them. And then we're going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your clothing and your eggs done, you can wash and dry that small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base coat for our nose, hands, beard, and ears. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are red, yellow, white, brown, and my pink that I've already mixed. So what I'm going to first do is make myself a skin color for the nose and the hands. So I have pre-mixed my skin color so you can see where I'm headed. How I got there is a little bit of red, a little bit of my yellow, a little bit of brown, and a touch of white. I mix all 4 of those colors together, and then I see what I get. That's a little bit too red for me, so I would add a touch more yellow and maybe a little bit more white, and I just keep adjusting it until I've got it into the perfect skin tone that I am looking for. And you could have any color of skin that you want. This is a gnome. They have different color skins. They can have, purple skin and yellow skin or whatever you'd like for them to have. So this is the color I'm going for. I'm going to color in my hands with it. And again, just bringing that color right to the object that it's next to and even overlapping it a bit if I need to make sure that I've got full coverage, especially in this area where it overlaps the egg and the clothing a little bit. And then I'm going to color in my other hand with the same skin tone. And again, we'll be doing other details around the clothing and the egg and all that stuff to give it some good dimension. Right now it looks like we're just kind of coloring in a coloring book with some nice flat colors, which is a great way to start out the painting process on something like this. Now I'm going to color in my gnome nose with that same skin color. So just getting that on in through there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush because I'm going to be using my pink color for the next color, and it'll be the inside color of the ears. So I just washed and dried my brush. I'm picking up some of my pink color that we did for the eggs, and I'm just coloring in what I am calling the inside of my fun rabbit gnome ears. If there ever really is such a thing. Maybe this magical little gnome is just really he's inspired by the holiday Easter bunnies, and he has decided to make himself into his own gnome bunny of sorts. So something like that. And your edges don't have to be perfect on this because we're going to have some fluffy ears, so you can have it not you can have it not perfect when you do that step. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to pre-mix myself a gray color for the beard. So what I've done is I've used black and white to create a medium gray tone, which I'll be using for the base color of my beard. So I've got this going on in through here, and you can of course have it in, it can be lighter or darker, it can have some brown in it, whatever works for you. This is looking pretty good for me. And then once you've got the color that you want, I'm going to be coloring in my entire beard area. But when I get to the exterior edges, I'm going to bring out a couple of fun stray pieces of hair. When I'm by the nose, I'm going to go just a little bit slower so I can get this my brush to go right in between the nose and the hat. So I just slowed down a bit while I was in that region. I'm going to go slowly underneath the nose itself and then just kind of scoop my brush up in between the nose and the hat, up into that little crease area that we had kind of drawn out during the outline process. And then I'm going to go right up to my egg because I want my egg to look like it's kind of popping out. So I am going to have some hair kind of sitting behind it. So I'm going to just give this some nice clean lines around these objects. It's going to be where I meet the arms is where I'm going to give it some little stray pieces. So right now just kind of slowing down, giving myself a nice clean outline around these pieces in through here. And again, 100% coverage is not necessary at this point. You just want to get the good makings of the start for this section. So when I get over in through here, this is where you can bring your color all the way to the clothing. And then I'm going to start to overlap little pieces and let them come out the sides a little bit. We're going to do a little bit of a highlight on the arm as well, but this is just going to give you the start of a nice, fun, freestyle of hair. So just as it's meeting that arm, I'm just bringing a couple of little pieces over so that way we'll have a nice natural kind of transition from the long beard into as it's making its way over that arm in that area. And I'll do the same thing on this side. So right in this corner in through here, I'll just bring out some pieces and overlap them a little bit onto the arm itself. You don't have to overlap the whole thing. Again, we'll be doing a little bit of detail on the arm to give that arm some form, but right now just kind of overlapping just a little bit of that hair so we can start that process. And then I'm going to use this gray plus white on my brush. So I have gray plus white in order to give myself the base coat of the outside of my rabbit ears. So just the gray plus white. So this will give it a little bit lighter of a tone than the beard itself. So gray plus white, and my edges I'm going to just make on the messier side. So I'm just kind of pulling those out so they're a little bit messier. We'll be putting a little bit more detail on it later, but this is just, again, starting the process. So gray plus white is how I'm starting this, and just coloring this in, making sure that I've got my whole area colored in. And then once I've got this done, I will be using this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it, of course, just up at these top of these ears, just making sure it's nice and fun and it doesn't have to be anything perfect. So there we go. And I'm going to wash and dry this brush in preparation for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are going to finish our hat and our clothing. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, my light yellow, white, and my light blue, and maybe a little bit of black too. If I use any other colors, I'll let you know. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to load my brush with some brown paint. I'm going to put my shadows on my hat. So my shadows on my hat are going to provide the form, or start to talk about the form, which will be like little indents in the edges of the hat, some shadows underneath these ears, shadows where the rim meets the hat and through here, and maybe a little bit of shadow on the left-hand side, maybe a little shadow underneath here. So I have brown on my brush, and my brown tends to be on the transparent or translucent side. So what I like to do is I like to put it in the darkest area that I want, say in through this crease, in through here, and then what I do is I start rubbing it out so it blends out into the lighter area. So because again my paint tends to be on the translucent or transparent side, it allows me to get away with just rubbing it into the neighboring area like a dry brush type of a technique. If you are doing this and it doesn't blend well for you, what you can do is pick up the light yellow color and get those edges to blend in with one another, which I will most likely do as a final kind of step for this, but during your process of getting it to go from dark to light, if you need to pick up that light yellow, you can do that. I just picked up some more of my brown because I want this left-hand side of my hat to have some shadowing on it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to again just kind of rub it into the rub it to the right, and that will allow me to have it look like it is being shadowed over there on the left hand side. Picking up a teeny bit more of brown paint, and again, you don't need a lot of paint on your brush, just a little tiny bit will help. I'm going to put a little shadow in through here, so this is going to make my hat look like the edge is kind of flipped over a little bit, and I'm just going to rub it into that neighboring yellow. So something like that will work for me. It's looking good. And if you have any chalk residue at this point, you can kind of get rid of it. I'm going to put a little bit of shadow in this area right in through here. So this is the crevice underneath the other ear in through there. And then I want a little bit on the sides of the hat, but I don't want them to necessarily look as dark as that shadow. So I'm going to pick up some of my light yellow plus brown on my brush, and this will be a little bit lighter of a tone than what was I did in the actual shadow area, and this will give me almost like a little dip in the hat, so it'll make it look like it's got a little bit more form to it. So again, I have brown plus a teeny bit of my light yellow on my brush, and this allows me to give that information. While this is kind of settling for a minute, I'm going to go and put my shadows down on my bottom clothing. So I just picked up some brown paint, and I'm going to put the shadow right underneath my hands, underneath the cuff of my shirt, the sleeve, and through here. And you can shape that sleeve right now if you want to with that darker tone on your brush. And again, I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to kind of pull it out and blend it out with the neighboring color of the clothing. Because this is kind of a longer drapier type of cloth, you can pull it down in the direction of that, the way that the cloth would fall. So again, just starting with a little bit of brown, giving myself the outline of sorts where I want that shadow to go, and just giving it underneath this egg in through here, and then I can just rub it down into the rest of the clothing. You can now, I'm going to pick up a little bit of cobalt blue plus my brown. I want this to look a little bit deeper and darker in some of these areas, so I picked up a little bit of the cobalt blue plus brown, and that will give you a nice real deep type of a shadowy color underneath and almost look like it's darkening the clothes itself, or making that blue a little bit darker. Now I'm picking up some of my light blue in order to just get these to blend in a little bit, and you can play with that shadow. I said I might be using black. That would have been an area if I wanted it to go a little bit darker. I could have used the black paint, but right now I just chose to use the blue and the brown because I'm digging the way that it's looking. So that's going to be my shadowy areas on there. Maybe a little, no, I think that's going to be good. All right, so I'm going to wash and dry my brush and go back up top to the highlights on my on my hat. So I'm going to be using my light yellow plus white on my brush. I want a nice highlight in through here, in through the bridge of the hat, in through here. And once I've got the highlighted part on where I want that lightest of light to go, what I'll do is I just wipe my brush off on my paper towel if I have too much paint on it, and then just pick up the original light yellow and get it to blend out into that neighboring area. So this is that point where if I needed a second layer on any of the neighboring paint, this is the time to do it. So you can get it to, to its final resting place with a second coat. Make sure that it is fully painted. Sometimes during these painting processes, the paint doesn't cover as much as we want on that first coat, and then you can just elevate it. I'm picking up a little bit more white just to get this front part to be a little bit brighter. You can just keep elevating it to pop out a little bit more by just bringing in a little bit of lightness. I'm going to do the same thing up at the top of the hat. So I picked up my light yellow plus white. I'm going to give myself a nice highlight up at the tippy top of this hat, maybe right on the edge in through here. If I want there to be a little bit of a area that pops out a little bit over here, this will just make it look a little bit more rounder. I can do that. And then once I've decided where all these little highlights are going to go, now I just start picking up my light yellow and getting it to blend in with those neighboring colors. And then I'm going to repeat this on the arms and on the clothing down below. So the process is pretty repetitive once you get going on how you can add those shadows and the highlights. I do want to make sure, actually I'm going to have some flowers and stuff in through here, so I'm not concerned about the perfect meeting point of those, but I do want to make sure that I've got all of these edges nice and finished on my hat, so it looks nice and fully rendered. So now on my clothing I've got my sleeves and then the bottom. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put my light blue plus white on my brush. I'm going to give myself a couple of little cuffs on my sleeves. So this is light blue plus white, and just giving myself this nice little detail in through here. And then I'm going to use that blue plus a little bit of white on my brush just to give myself a little bit of a highlight on the top part of the arm. It's okay if you bump into the beard at this point, because that will be adding more on top of that in a minute, but I'm just trying to give myself a little lightness on this arm so it gives it a little bit of form. So the light blue plus your white will help to do that. And then I'm going to do the same thing over on the other arm. So light blue plus white is going to give me a little bit of a highlight and form on the top of this arm and through here. And then I think I'm also going to add a little bit of shadow underneath that cuff, which I hadn't thought about when I was doing the shadow down below. So I'm picking up a little bit of my cobalt blue plus brown on my brush to give myself a little bit of a shadow at the bottom of this sleeve, just to again make sure that I've got enough form down there and that you can see the little cuff of the sleeve. So that's looking pretty good. And then I'm just going to finish this bottom clothing. So I'm going to go with my light blue and maybe a bit of cobalt blue just to give this a little bit more depth and richness down in through here. I do want it to just look like it's nice and flowy. You can have it as light or as dark as you want, maybe a little bit more cobalt blue just to make this look like it's a little bit more in the shadows. And of course you can finesse yours whatever way you want. You just want to make sure that it looks like it's fully painted. So sometimes when we're doing these steps, it starts to dry and we're like, oh, well, it looks like it could use a little bit more paint here or there, like underneath that egg shape. I thought that it needed a little bit more paint, even though we had already thought that we finished that spot. And then over in through here, because it's clothing, I'm using an up and down type of brush stroke to give the idea that that the cloth is in a downward, gravity is taking over. And then you can do any little fiddling that you want on this, and we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your hat and your clothing done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our eggs. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are my pink, my light yellow, my light blue, brown, and white. And I'm going to tackle these pretty similarly to how I did the hat and the clothing, which is I'm going to add the shadows and then the highlights and get them to blend in. So I'm going to start. Oh, did I say I was going to use brown? I'm going to use brown too. Brown's going to be my shadow color. So I'm going to load my brush with some brown paint. I'm going to start with my pink egg in through here. So I really want this one to have some good shadow on it because I want it to look like the hands are shadowing it as well. So I'm putting some pretty dark brown in underneath these hands. You could even use a bit of black, which I think I'm going to. I'm going in for some black. I didn't say I was going to use black, but I'm deciding I'm going to use some black because I want this shadow to be pretty dark underneath these hands. So I just put a little bit of black underneath there, give myself some good dimension. Now I'm going to pick up some more brown and get it to blend in. You could use a little bit of water on your brush as well, just to make sure that you've got this blended as much as you want. The water will help with the fluidity and allow you to kind of move that paint in a way that will get it to smooth out around the pink and stuff. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to let that sit for a minute. I'm going to go on to my other I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put some brown paint on my brush, and I'm just going to go one egg to the next and put a little bit of shadow on there. So again, just a little bit of brown. So I'm going to have my shadows down at the bottom, or underneath, behind one egg, if you feel that one egg would be casting a shadow on another. So just a little bit of the brown, and then just rub it up into the neighboring paint. So again, just a little bit of brown. I'm doing my shadows first because I know that the tops of the eggs will be laying in front of the shadowy areas. So if I bump into one of the eggs with this brown on my brush where I don't want to, the edge, on the edge, that's okay, because when I go to clean or do my highlight on, say, this pink egg, I'll be able to clean up that area. So I'm not terribly concerned about bumping in too much. And then I just reload my brush with some brown, put it down in the area of the egg that I feel would be shadowed the most, so just more towards the bottom. Some of these eggs where we're just seeing the tippy top, you might not even really see much of a shadow. There might be a little shadow from the neighboring egg, but you might not see the whole shadow that's down at the bottom of that particular egg because we're just seeing the top of the egg. So there may be that instance where you don't necessarily, especially when we're just seeing a little bit of the top, where you don't need to put a whole bunch of shadow on it. And then again, I'm just rubbing that brown up so it kind of fades up. And if it doesn't fade as well as you want, again, that's okay, because we'll do the highlight in a second, and just put in a little bit of brown over in through here, giving myself a little bit of shadow down there. I'll do the same thing with this blue egg in through here. And then this green egg, I'm not sure if I'm going to have a whole lot, maybe just a tiny bit down in through here. So now that I've got my shadows on, now I'm going to put some highlights. So I'm going to do my pink eggs first. I'm going to go color by color on my highlights, so that way I don't have to wash my brush much. So I'm going to start with some white and pink on my brush and start wherever I feel I want that lightest part to go. So that's going to be near the top, up and through here. And then once I've got that highlight on there, I just kind of blend it out. I'm going to pick up some of my pink now and just get it to blend down into my shadowy area. I'll put a little brighter highlight on it in a second, but this is just getting the transition from the light to the dark. Now I pick up a little bit of white and give myself a real bright highlight up on the top, and then just kind of blend it out a little bit. And then I'll just repeat this for all my pink ones. So pink and white, giving myself the highlight part where I feel it would be the brightest. So little pink and white up there. I'm going to do these two at the same time, so I don't have to, I feel I can get away with it. So just kind of that light area, blend it out, and now pick up my pink, the original version of the pink to get it to blend in with those shadowy areas, something like that. Do the same thing on the other pink egg, so just a little bit of the original pink that we had, and then just kind of overlap it into that shadowy area, something like this. And you'll find that, you know, as you're going about it, you'll get your rhythm. I mean, I know I've been doing this for 101 years, and I can, I know when my brush can fly to the next one without reloading it. And that's something that just comes over time. That's not something that you can be taught. It's just something, it's brush control. It's knowing how much paint is on your brush and, you know, and what you can get away with and what you can't. I just put some white paint on my brush so I can get that bright highlight up here on the top. And then I'll do the same thing for the other pink one. So I just picked up a touch of white and giving myself that bright highlight right at the top. And I'm going to repeat that step for the other colored eggs. So washing and drying my brush, I'm going to go in for my yellow ones first. So light yellow plus white on my brush. Give myself that start of that light highlighted area. I can go ahead and do that on the other two. So light yellow. Now I need to go all the way to the edge because I've already done my clothing in this spot. So I have to just be mindful of that so I can clean up that edge and do the same thing over here. Light yellow plus white on my brush. I'm cleaning up my edge because this is the last step to the egg, so I got to make sure those edges on these front ones correct any of the back detail. So now I'm going to just make sure that my edges are nice and set, picking up my light yellow color now to make sure that it blends, that I have that highlighted area transitioning down into the shadowy area. And if you go to transition into the shadowy area and you feel like you want to pick up more brown, feel free to do so. If you feel like it needs to wait a minute and needs to dry a bit, then wait for it to dry. You don't have to go at the speed that I go at. You can take your time. You can do more layers than I'm doing. You can finesse it more than I'm finessing. I'm really just aiming to give you the basic information, and you can run with it and take it as far as your painterly eye wants to take it, and take it as fast or as slow as you want to take it. So that's going to be up to you. Right now I just keep picking up my light yellow color to get that highlight to blend out, and making sure I've got my, bring it all the way to the edge of the neighboring egg, and making it blend into my shadowy area. And then I'll hit the tops with that just white paint to give myself that bright little pop of it, maybe a little shiny spot on those eggs, and then just blend it out a little bit. If you want to, you could even just leave it like a clean kind of swipe in through there. That gives it a fun effect. And then I'm going to go on to, let's go to the blue ones. So just washing and dry my brush, picking up a little bit of that light blue plus white paint. Give myself that highlight kind of area, and I'll blend it out a little bit. I'll go back to the other one and blend that out in a second. There we go. And I had a good amount of paint on my brush. That's why I just kind of flew over to the other one while I had it on my brush. So again, this is the light blue plus a little bit of white. And now that the highlights are in place, now I just pick up more of the light blue to transition it down towards that, down towards the shadowy area. And again, just kind of controlling the amount of paint that I have on my brush so I can get them to overlap and look like they are just transitioning, kind of a seamless transition. That's looking pretty good. Going to go and do the same thing on the other one. So just some light blue on my brush to transition that highlighted area down into the shadowy area. And then I'm going to pop on that bright highlight at the top. So white paint on the top, swipe it in, and then if you feel like you want to blend it out a little bit, you can blend it out a little bit. And again, the blend out isn't totally necessary because that little shiny part would happen sometimes if they're really, you know, there's a lot of gloss to them. They could have just a little swipe of a color, and I just need to do my green ones. So washing and drying my brush, I don't see much on these. These are just little ones, so just a little bit of green and white on my brush, and just making sure that I've got those edges cleaned up. and that it just kind of transitions down. So the light green plus white over here as well, get that tip a little bit lighter than the mid section, and then just making sure I've got it to the edge, picking up a little bit of just the light green again to transition it, make sure that transition happens down into the shadowy area, or if I need a second coat on any area because I feel like I need to get to this edge over here, there we go, and then I'll pop on I'm wiping my brush off, picking up a tiny bit of the white to give myself that little highlight at the spot that I want to pop out the most, and then just blending that out just a little bit. And then we're going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your eggs done, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our nose, our hands, and our ears. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my skin color, gray, white, brown, and maybe some pink and maybe some black. I'll call them out as usual for everything that I do. So I'm going to first tackle the hands and the nose because they're going to be pretty similar. I'm going to put a little bit of brown paint on my brush to give myself a shadow underneath that at the bottom side of that nose. So this might land on your beard area, which is totally fine because you're going to have shadow there as well. And then I just kind of rub it up into the midsection of that nose. I'm going to do the same thing for my hands. So I'm going to put some brown at the bottom of the hands, maybe a little bit as they're going into the sleeve. Also a little bit between the thumb and the main part of the hand. And then of course I'll get my hand out of the way, just rub it up into that skin color. And again, if you need to utilize that skin color to get that blend to happen better, then feel free to do so. So just a little bit of brown paint on my brush, bringing it towards the bottom of the hand and just rubbing it in or up into the base color of the hand. I'm going to get a little bit into this thumb area, my gnome thumb area, and then just get it to blend in a little bit. And again, the key is just to have the quantity of paint on your brush that you want. I think actually I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint right now. I want to put a little shadow in where the sleeve meets the hand in through here. So I want it to look a little bit darker. So I just picked up a tiny bit of black plus a little bit of water on my brush. So I can scoot up a tiny bit of a shadow right up this sleeve. I just think it'll give it a little bit more dimension up in that. Yeah, that works for me. Sometimes those little tiny things are what makes my eye happy. So I just do them when I want to. And maybe a little bit more darkness in this thumb area as well. Yeah, there we go. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I want to put the highlight on these pieces, so I'm going to do my skin color plus a little bit of white on my brush. Again, repeating a similar process to what I did down on the eggs, which is putting that light color on and then just blending it out into the neighboring skin or the neighboring color. Something like this. Same thing with down here. And if your paint dries faster than mine, you can certainly just go one piece at a time. Again, this is that control of the quantity of paint on your brush. So I had the skin tone plus a little bit of white. I'm putting it in the area that I want that the lightest parts to start. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick up a touch of white paint on my brush to give myself a nice bright little pop of a highlight, and then just blend that out a little bit into the neighboring area. And again, you could, if I needed to, I could pick up some of the base skin color, which I just did to make sure that these transition into one another as well as I want them to. And do the same thing on the hands. So you can pick up, I just picked up the regular skin color just to make sure that these transition as much as I want to, that light area into the dark area. And then once I've got that transitioned the way that I want it, I'll add just a little pop of bright highlight onto the edges, giving it a little bit more form and dimension. And then once I've got that done, I'm going to transition up into the ears. Oh my God, these are looking so cute. I like these little fun characters. Maybe this one needs a little bit more skin tone in through here. As I'm looking at it, this thumb looks pretty big, but that's okay. Who's to say what size a gnome's thumbs should be, right? Only our imagination will tell us how big or small those thumbs should be. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to work on those ears. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put some shadows down at the bottom, so I'm going to put some brown paint on my brush. I want a little shadowy area where the ear meets the hat, so a little bit of brown, and then just kind of pulling it up in a messy way. I also want a little shadow inside my ear, maybe up in through here, just to give myself a little bit of interior dimension on those ears. I'm going to pick up a touch more brown for this left-hand side over here, so a little bit of brown right where it meets the hat, and then just kind of pulling it up to give myself some shadow in through there, and then maybe just a little bit of shadow inside this ear like this. And then I'm going to start picking up gray plus white in order to get some fun fur, longer fur on the exterior part of these ears. So this is gray plus white, and I'm really just bringing out these fun longer pieces of fur, ear fur, I guess. You could have you could even use like brown and white if you wanted to have tan type of ears, and bringing it out past the original gray. And because I'm using white also, and you can even use more white than I'm using, but you could, or less white than I'm using, you can steer it into whatever brightness you want it to be and fluffiness that you want it to be. These are your fun, imaginative ears. You could even put a little bit on this other side if you wanted to. I'm going to do the same thing on the left side, so gray plus white on my brush, and of course this ear is in a little bit different position, so I'm going to just kind of start pulling up in these fun curved type of brush strokes, bringing it all the way up and kind of outside of that original footprint that we had, which is going to make it look even fluffier if you have those light and kind of airy pieces going past your original footprint. So that's just a fun way to get more dimension onto it, is just bringing those little additional pieces past the original footprint and giving them a little bit more lightness and not overdoing it. Just kind of going with a little bit of addition to it, and that'll give you some fabulous little fluffy ears and give you some good dimension. Bring it in front of your hat too. That'll give you, more information as well. And then once you've got this all done, fiddle with it as much as you want. We're going to use this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our beard. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, gray, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding some shadowy areas around the nose, and I'm going to add some nice shadowy areas around the egg and hands and down at the bottom of the hair. And then we're going to just put some wavy beard hair on top of it. So I'm going to start with black paint on my brush, but I'm also going to be using, I like to dip my brush in my water to put fluid in my bristles, and then I tap it off on my paper towel. That's going to, one, give me a nice pointy tip to my brush, and also with the fluidity, it will allow me to have these nice kind of clean lines. So I can put nice skinny lines in through here. So I'm going to put a nice shadow in between where that nose meets the hat, and I'm going to bring it down into the beard area. So this is watered down black paint on my brush, and then what I can do is, as I'm bringing it into the beard, I just can kind of pull it out in these wispy little pieces of hair. And you can always add more. So if it's too watered down, just add a little bit more black paint to your brush, and that'll get it to be a deeper darker black. If there's too much water on it, it will be transparent or translucent, and that will add, that'll make it look a little bit grayer because it'll be on top of that gray base. And then again, I'm just bringing it over towards the edges and then just kind of pulling it down in whatever fun, whimsical, bearded kind of way that I want. I want a little bit more shadow underneath this nose. So again, just bringing it up there. And you can see it almost looks gray at this point because I do have enough water on my brush to give it that appearance. I'm going to reload my brush. I'm going to put some of this down by the egg. So again, just making sure I have some water on my brush. I want the beard to look like it is kind of casting a nice shadowy dark area around these objects in through here. So I am using that black plus a little bit of water just to really deepen the dimensional elements in through here. And then once I've got it kind of started, then I'll start bringing these fun, hairy type of whimsical pieces out towards this right hand side, and then I'll do the same thing out towards the left hand side. So I just added a bit more black to my to the equation, so it's a little bit darker in through here. My egg is turning a little bit different shape on me right now. You bump into your egg like I just did, you can always correct that in a minute. And then I just kind of bring some of these dark pieces up and around my objects in through here, and then I can start pulling some of them out onto the arms as well. So again, this is just watered down black. This is going to help to give you the little shadowy areas underneath the beard, and it also helps to give you the direction of the hair. So it's allowing for the evidence of the waves and whatever direction you feel that you want that fun hair to go into. So now what I'm going to do, now that I've got this in place, I'm going to start picking up my gray paint and allowing myself to kind of release the rest of whatever black I had on my brush. So I'm going to utilize the gray with whatever the remnants were on my brush to start transitioning into what we'll call the lighter or highlighted pieces of the beard. So this is just kind of releasing that black. It's giving me a transition type of appearance. I'm not adding more water onto my brush right now. I'm just picking up the gray paint, and now I'm going to start picking up white plus gray, and this is going to start to get me towards the lighter pieces, but they're not going to be the lightest pieces. It's just going to start. It's going to start my process. So again, I have gray plus white, and you can make this beard go in whatever direction you want. You can have it super curly. You can have it straight if you want to. I'm just kind of giving mine a look of maybe coming off either side. Maybe it's got a little bit of warpiness to it because maybe there's a little gnome face underneath there, hiding underneath the beard. And then once you've got it going as far out as you want, and you've got pretty much everything on here that you want as far as the direction of it and things of that nature, now I'm going to just start picking up white on my dirty brush and just giving myself some additional bright little pieces of the hair. So it gives you these little pops of highlights here and there. Again, it doesn't have to be anything, really full or in the same exact direction as mine. I'm just having a good time adding these bits of waves and highlights and stuff. And if you go too far, that's okay. Gnomes can have lots of hair. I just added a bit more gray on my brush just to give myself enough movement in here without having to go all white, and then just fiddle with it as much as you want. Make it fluffier, make it, you could make it tan if you wanted to, whatever you want. And then we are going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your cute little gnome beard on here, you can wash and dry this small brush, just getting some extra little pieces over here. Wash and dry the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint stems, grass, and leaves. So what we're going to really do is we're going to be putting, eventually we're going to put a couple of flowers up here in the head or in the hat. So I want to have a couple of flower leaves coming out of this rim in through here. I also want to have a couple of flowers in the landscape. So I'm going to need some stems for those flowers. And then I'm going to have some wild grass throughout my landscape as well. So stems, grass, and leaves. We're going to be using a small brush. We're going to use it green and black paint. So I'm going to start up at my hat in through here. I'm going to put just a little bit of green and a touch of black. The black can really easily take over, so you don't need a ton on your brush. And I'm just going to fiddle with where I want to have some just little pieces of leaves sticking out here. I suppose you could use some brown too if you wanted to. I'm going to just kind of get a whole bunch right at this little area where it's meeting the hat. I just put a little bit more black on my brush. So a combination of black and green is what I'm going to be using. You can have these little fun little whatever kind of leaves you want. Just imagine them to be whatever you want and just let your brush, sometimes just letting your brush have fun and wiggling it and just getting these little representational things to come about. I'm going to have a leaf or a flower in through here, so I'm going to put some bigger leaves kind of coming out this edge in through here. And I like to sometimes just push my brush and give myself a little point to the leaf, but you can, again, make it whatever way that you want. Over here, I'm not really going to do too much because I know I'm going to have a big flower in through there, so that's looking pretty good. I don't think I need anything else, maybe a little more here. It's hard when you go to do these fun, like natural type of elements. I have a tough time stopping. So I'm going to reload my brush with green and black. I'm going to put some little wild grass coming up in front of some of my eggs down here. During this process down at the bottom, I'm going to alternate picking up green and black. So that way I will naturally, without thinking about it, I'll have some lighter spots and some darker spots. I like it to just look organic. I don't like it to look like I thought about it too hard. So I definitely, as I go through the process, like to increase my chances of having it look messy by just kind of alternating colors on my brush. I want it to have some of the grass behind this yellow one, so I'm going to just kind of outline the top of that and then just start pulling up while that paint is still wet. I'm pulling up some pieces of grass, and then I'm going to have it coming over in through here, picking up some green paint. Again, I want it to look very organic and natural, so I pull it up and kind of give it a little bit of a curve with my head and with my brush. I just noticed my head was moving while my brush was moving, so that's not something that you need to do to make the painting look good. So now I'm all distracted. So now I'm just, again, alternating my green and my black. I'm going to have some, maybe there's a little bit of black and green in between these ones. So I want these eggs to just kind of look like they're nestled in the grass. And, you know, maybe this magical gnome just stumbled upon a whole, you know, a bushel of bunny eggs or rabbit eggs or chicken eggs or Easter eggs, I guess would be the appropriate type of eggs that we're looking for here. So just have as much fun with it as you want. Keep it organic and natural looking if you want to go for that kind of look, or if you want it to be very illustrated and cartoon-esque, you can certainly go for that type of look too. Again, I'm going to put some back behind here as well. If you are struggling with getting the pieces to give you like longer type of strokes or pieces of grass, adding that bit of fluidity to your brush will help. It will allow you to get the length on the pieces of grass or the stems, whatever you want to call the majority of these. I'm going to put some coming up in this left hand part also, so because I want to have a couple of flowers up in through here, so I'm going to have some really tall stems, maybe a big one coming in through here, and of course you can have some coming from the side. Just really enjoy the process. Don't labor over it too much. Just let happen whatever's going to happen. If you want some on this side, you can put, little pieces up in through here, whatever works for you. And then once you've got enough grass, stems, and leaves, we are going to use this same brush for the next step, but you'll want to wash it and dry it in preparation. Okay, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint some flowers. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are brown, white, yellow, and that might be it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be making these representational type of flowers that are going to be reminiscent of daisies, but you could certainly make any kind of flower that you want. Just be carefree and have fun with it. It doesn't have to be my style flowers, but I like these little white daisies, so that's what I'm going with. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to make myself a base color for my flower petals, which is going to be tan. So I'm going to take white, and I'm gonna, and maybe a little blue, but white, and mix it with a touch of brown. So I'm really just going for a light tan color to be the base color for my petals. This will provide me with a nice dimensional element to them as I build them, so they're not just flat white. And as I do this, I'm gonna be doing a couple up in the hat and then a whole bunch down below. So I'm going to start with my ones up in my hat first. So for me, daisies have a bunch of petals that just kind of flop out from the center. So I like to kind of just give myself almost, this pinwheel of petals and, thinking about where I want the center to be. They don't all have to be petals along the edge or seeing from the front. You could do one where you actually see the flower from the side. So you could do the petals just going out one side of the flower like that. So I'm going to do a whole bunch more. I'm going to do a big one over here on the right hand side. So again, just kind of maneuvering my brush to give me these curved type of petals along the edges, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do some more down in the grass. I think I need to make myself a little bit more of my tan. So once I've got that on my brush, I'm gonna do, let's see, maybe I'll have, and you don't necessarily have to put them exactly where you have your stems. Like I want to have one in through here, but I don't have a stem here, so I can certainly make a stem in a minute if I want to, or I just put another flower right underneath it and pretend like there's a stem that I'm just not seeing. And you don't have to put the petals all the way around. Again, if you're seeing the flower from the side, you can just do a few petals coming out like this, and maybe maybe that's the side of the bottom one. Maybe we've got a couple little ones coming. We're just seeing the edge of them poking out from behind that egg. Maybe I've got another little one up in through here. So, again, explore your free flower making ability. Maybe I've got one in through here, and then I'm going to have one down in front of this pink one over here. And again, I just like to kind of be carefree with where I put them, and so they don't look too organized, but that's going to be something that's a visual preference on your part. Some people really like their flowers and everything else to be really organized and have the same number on each side, but I like to have a little more information than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now just pick up some white paint on my dirty brush, and I go back over these petals, but I don't do it as full of a brush stroke. So I'm really just kind of giving it a painterly little swoosh in part of that petal. If you feel that this looks too stripy for you, you could do it with the tan on your brush at the same time. So you can pick up the white plus the tan, but I like to do it this way, because I can see some good dimension when I do it that way. And I just have fun, carefree, allowing myself to let some of that tan show, and that's going to, for me, gives me that dimensional element. I'm leaving the little centers. If I feel that I'm going to be seeing the center on that particular flower, I will leave a little bit of that center kind of on the darker side. And again, I just am flying through these just with a little bit of a painterly stroke, so I don't overthink it, just giving myself those bits of highlights on those petals. And then I'm only using white, so it'll show some of the tan next to it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up brown paint, and whatever flowers I feel like I can see the center, I'm going to dot in a little dark area in that center. It doesn't have to be just one dot. You can take it and just give yourself a good area, and then just, you know, you could even pull it out in between those petals if you felt that you wanted to see a little bit of shadow in between those petals. But I'm gonna primarily kind of just go in for that center part. This one maybe we're seeing from the side, so maybe I see that center part a little bit. That one I'm not going to see. Oh, I forgot to put the white on those two. I'm going to have to come back to that in a second. I'm going to see the center on these guys in through here. I am going to wash and dry my brush and put the white on these two here, so I don't forget about those. So a little bit of white on my brush right now, just giving myself a little pop of highlight on these petals in through here. And then I'm going to pick up yellow, the chrome yellow and white on my brush at the same time. This is going to give me my colored part inside the center of my flowers. So I'm not covering up all the brown. I'm going towards the top part of the brown, and I'm just dotting in this chrome yellow and white. I'm using them on my brush at the same time, as opposed to using just the light yellow that we had pre-mixed, because I want more diversity in the color pattern. So I've got the chrome yellow and white that I'm using at the same time to give myself these little speckly marks within the center of the flower, more towards the top part of that brown section. And then you can fiddle with these as much as you want. You can put more flowers or less flowers, whatever floats your boat. And then we're going to be using this small brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going to go bottom left on this one with black paint. I sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine. It's your painting. You get to sign it however you'd like. That's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself an adorable gnome, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.